Welcome to the MX podcast featuring Dan Roberts.
Lena, so how's Luna doing?
She's great. She's very good, very cozy. She's just like laying here. There you go.
For people listening, Luna, which is Layla's dog, had surgery the other day, so we're all wishing for a speedy recovery. Very cute. So, Lena, I know you from Instagram, actually, for Models Empowered, which is a wonderful account. I know you're a co-founder of this account. Let's talk about that first. Like, why did you set that up? Or why did you co-set it up? What was the thinking behind it?
So I was studying psychology in London, and at the end of my course, and also I was doing modeling for about 8 years at the time. And I was really interested in how modeling industry affects, in a way, mental health and well-being of models in particular. So I did my research on, I've been basically exploring eating behaviors among fashion models. So I've been doing interviews and just exploring what's the connection between eating behaviors and modeling industry in terms of like pressures, restrictions and stuff. So this is kind of when I started thinking about combining psychology with modeling industry, because by working within the industry, I saw some patterns, and so many people that I interviewed were basically experiencing very similar things, and it wasn't really shocking for me, because I could really relate to things that they were saying about, how they felt about eating, being pressured to lose weight at some point, and like lots of things I actually felt really bad about when I was younger and when I was starting modeling industry. So the only thing that was really bothering me, that I never really had a chance to speak about those things with anyone when I was doing modeling. So, and then I kind of thought that there has to be a way to make people able to speak about it more freely and openly. I personally do not like social media. If you're going to go to my personal account, it's just basically like, I've never been good at it. So it never really been really important to me. I never really wanted to spend my time on, building my social media profile, which I guess some people do enjoy it much more. And it's also quite,
I think very few people enjoy it. I think people ignore it. They do it because they're forced to it.
It's sort of like a requirement right now, I think, more, especially in the modeling industry as well.
I think if you're self-employed in any industry, you kind of have to look after your brand in some way, but we'll talk about that as time goes on.
But then equally, so I thought there is no better way to actually reach out to people, because everyone is using Instagram right now. So together with friends of mine who also had a great experience in modeling industry and had lots of good advice and experience to share, we just started talking about it, and we decided to set it up and start Models Empowered, and basically speak about things about the modeling industry that we wish we knew when we were starting modeling career. So going through basically all our mistakes and putting everything on the table and making it available for people, so maybe someone can also relate to it, and instead of learning on their own experience, maybe they can learn a little bit from ours.
Yeah, it's a great account. I mean, I'm sure it helps so many people. I recommend it to a lot of people. So I'm interested though, just as like a fellow business owner, like what was the plan to kind of make this to a business, or was this just a way of just helping people?
So at the beginning, we obviously not knowing how social media will work, how much time that's going to take, we're saying like, we're going to be posting something every day and it's not going to be taking too much time. And that took so much of our time. It's like all planning, and then it was, although it was a great experience, because sort of this is also something that we don't really get in the modeling industry, like the skills that we don't really learn, or like we not being taught how to do, is communication, having a good communication with team, working with people, because normally we're getting on a set and we're working with random people all the time. We don't really build this relationships.
You given any, you started when you were a teenager, right? How old were you when you started?
17 years old.
Were you given, like, your first agency, did they give you any advice, or how did it?
Absolutely not. And this is also the reason why we started Models Empowered, because and again, I'm not going to be saying, because like there are some great agencies, because over past 10 years I've been working with some great agencies and some really bad agencies, so it's really important to be able to distinguish between good and bad, and sort of, you know, make your way through that, and just basically sign with the ones that are worth doing it, and the ones that are going to support you, because you can really get great modeling agencies. But yeah, at the beginning when I started, I didn't really know anything about the modeling industry. I did not know what to expect, what I'm actually going to be doing. I didn't know that I'm not only working for the modeling agency, but also modeling agency works for me. So it's not like I should.
Yeah, good point.
Like I felt obligated to agree to everything they kind of wanted from me, sort of sending me to different countries. I never really knew I can have a preference of going to certain places for some certain period of time as well, which right now I'm kind of more aware of the things, you know, negotiation and having good communication.
It's
And
hard though, Lena. I mean, when you're like, I mean, at 17, who knows anything about anything? I mean, it's quite hard to be all sassy and confident and clued up. I think it
exactly,
requires a little bit of experience. I think it's unrealistic to be completely like
yeah.
confident when you start something new.
Yeah, and I think sort of like it works like this for many industries, because there are so many students, you know, like just after the university joining new companies and like industries, and you
Yeah.
basically learn everything from the beginning, because you're very young, you've never been working professionally before. So for me, it was kind of the age that normally, you know, young people would go to for work. So it was 17 years old, but considering that some models starting work at age 14, which
Yeah.
is really, really young. And then you have completely no idea how to communicate with people, how to, you know, we like get this confidence, like where to get this confidence from at this point, because you also don't really know anything about the industry. And I think this is something that like good or bad agencies, like they should, you know, taking a very young people for professional work like that in a very demanding and challenging industry like this, they should be basically provided with, you know, better support and guidance, and sort of, you know, you should feel like you have always someone that is, you know,
Agreed.
have your back and gonna help you whenever you sort of feel uncomfortable. Or
The good agencies I've worked with, they do have when they sign someone who's very young, it is very much like a surrogate mother. They nurture, and they kind of don't just try and make as much money as they can for a couple of years. But
yeah,
like I said, like you, I've worked with and sort of seen very fantastic agencies full of caring, and ones which are more cared about their own profits. But it's hard. I
exactly.
mean, if you're like a 17-year-old girl and someone spots you as great, you can be a model, I want to sign you. That's incredibly exciting. It's, you know, you're saying, I mean, ideally you should stop, look at the contract and think I think if one person wants to sign you, there's a good chance that 2 or 3 other companies want to sign you, and you shouldn't get overexcited. I mean, is that something you'd recommend, just to take a step back and just...
Is definitely kind of looking at this realistic, more in a realistic way, because at the beginning, you know, when I started, I went to the first agency and I didn't plan to be a model, but then I was scouted and then went to the agencies, and I heard I'm going to go to Paris and Milan, and like for someone who is from, you know, small countryside, never been abroad, and was like, that sounds like a dream. And it really kind of was at the beginning, but then sort of like I just didn't consider how many challenges that also going to involve in terms of, you know, restrictions, sort of how, you know, that your measurements, like someone is checking your weight all the time.
So let's talk about that. What were the things which kind of, when you first entered the industry, what kind of things kind of jumped out of you going, oh, I didn't really expect this? What were surprises?
So it was kind of lots of pressure about your weight, and I think it's also the way that like maybe my agency wasn't really communicating in a really good way, which right now I know, because I know the agencies that even though you wouldn't be, you know, in shape like for the fashion weeks or whatever the requirements are, so you're basically not skinny enough to do certain jobs, they would be able to communicate this with you in a way that you wouldn't feel that there is something wrong with you, which at that point, I think this is what I felt, because I was trying to lose weight, and then, you're doing it in a quite unhealthy way, because I just did not know how to lose the weight. There were not many sources available for me. So, you would watch like YouTube videos of like how to lose weight in 10 days. So I can go to Milan and start my modeling contract. So that was, but that also can come from, I can't really say whether my agency at that time, whether they were aware of this or whether they did know about this or didn't care. Like, I'm trying not to make any assumptions, but I think, there is definitely sort of lack of empathy in a modeling industry, fashion industry in general, I would say. Sort of people not really trying to understand much of like what kind of position the other person is at, especially when you're super young. You can be really affected. It's like, yes, someone going to tell you to lose weight, and maybe the agent don't think that it's going to really affect the way how you feel about yourself as a person, rather than, just this is a requirement for work. It's not really about you.
I think you're right. I mean, it's been a while since I've talked to new agencies, but I was working for an agency in Brazil. Then when I came back to move to London, I met with all like the famous London agencies, and basically just said, hey, this is what I've been doing in Brazil, working with all these models. I'd like to help. I can do this and this and this. And only one agency, a company called Test Models, they're the ones which are kind of boutique agency. They're the ones who are like, yeah, we love that. Because I was talking about this ethical approach and my philosophy of how you can help girls kind of get athletic and get the measurements, but in a way which doesn't fuck their head up, but they were like really excited by it, and they were amazing. But other agencies were like, no, not interested. Even stuff I was like, hey, it won't cost you anything, I'll do a workshop for free. And quite a few are like, no, I'm not interested. And that was interesting to me. I was like, why are you not interested? I'm offering like free expertise on how to eat well, how to train, what the right things to do. Don't just starve yourself and do a yoga class, which was like the typical 1990s way of doing it. And so I was really shocked. But I think maybe now I know more agencies have their in-house trainers and they have in-house nutritionists. So it's changing a little bit. But back when I started, it was really rare.
Yeah, no, it's definitely sort of like, I think at some point it was mainly about, sort of agencies taking care of their own business, which is really understandable, because you kind of providing work and everything for models. So you sort of like, models are not really your, they self-employed. So we're not really kind of, it's not like, also this
commodity,
thing that we're not really employed by the agency. So legally, this is another thing, that fashion industry, modeling industry is really unregulated. So it's sort of like, even the things that agency doesn't really legally doesn't have any responsibilities towards you, because contracts are mainly, for your responsibility towards agencies, rather than whatever rights you've got.
But it feels quite often like you're like an employee when you first start. That's why it's really powerful what you said. It's like, no, that you're working for them, but also they're working for you. And it's completely 50-50.
And it's really good, because sort of like at this stage, sort of right now, and this is also advice for all models, that, if you're working with your booker at your agency and you have someone that you really trust, and someone who sends you jobs and your schedule and everything, like, just speak openly about everything you feel and want. And that's something that took me some time as well at the beginning, to realize that I can say that I've got some plans on Friday, and I don't know, going to see my family, and I really like, can I please have this day off? And if I wouldn't ask this, that wouldn't be off. And then if on Friday I would not want to do certain job that just came out to my schedule, then my booker would be really upset with me, being like, what do you mean you can't go to work? Which, if you just communicate clearly your needs and what you want, and sort of, if you need break because you've been working the whole week and you just need a Monday off, let's say, just say to your booker. And my agency right now is really, I can say, like, they're very understanding of any circumstances I'm at. Sort of, I could study, I could do my university and work in the modeling industry for the whole past 4.5 years, which is, you can combine it, but you just have to be very strict with your boundaries in terms of like, I've got exams, I can't do this certain sort of days of the week for
How about when you first start though, because it's easier for you now because you've had success, you've got a portfolio. When you first start, you can't be saying I'm not doing Fridays, I'm not getting up early. You kind of have to, like every job, you kind of have to say yes, as long as it's safe. And
it really depends. Sort of like at the beginning, you definitely don't really have confidence to do it, and this is the main thing. I don't even know if the agency would not like you saying it, but it's more like in our heads we're trying, because we know how competitive modeling is. And this is another thing, that is so many models. You're going for the casting in Milan and you see this lineup of 150 models, and you're like, if I'm gonna say that I can't do this Friday because I got some family even that is really important to me, they're gonna find like one of these girls and they're gonna get this job. So it's kind of is so much pressure, not even from the agencies to do the job, but we just kind of feel like we're really scared that we're not gonna we're gonna be rejected and we're not gonna get this job, and then they're gonna find someone else. So this is where lots of comparison is coming through, sort of like, I want to be better than, it's just very competitive, like I want to be better than other people and I want to get this job, not you. So
you're right, it's such competitive. And also because obviously it's you're objectified for a living. I mean, it is like, if people are judging you from how you look, it's very hard not to compare your body to other girls' bodies. How did you cope with that? Because obviously you had you got a master's in psychology now, but you've obviously had an interest in psychology, so you've been thinking about this. But how did you get your head around that? Because there's one thing intellectually knowing it, but there's another thing actually feeling it.
So at the beginning was kind of, when I started modeling, I was, had to lose some weight, and then, the weight was coming back, and then I was losing it again. And then sort of it was like more or less healthy ways of doing it, in a way that I was like restricting my diet a lot, and then also living in a models apartments, and then being in the environment with everyone just eating really small amounts of food, or some, and it's not even kind of, some girls wouldn't have any problems with the weight, but they would just not eat a lot. But then you would feel bad, sort of, I mean, like, I'm not saying it's general, but like I would feel bad if someone would eat a salad and I would want to eat something else that would, I don't know, have,
well, I think that's human nature.
Calories.
I mean, if I went out and like with 5 friends and all 4 of them had a salad and I'd have a burger, I'd feel like, oh my God, am I fat? Am I eating? I mean, that's normal to feel like that. It's like a little echo chamber, isn't it? So if you're in a model apartment, there's kind of quite often slightly disordered kind of thinking regarding food, and it normalizes it because that's your world.
Exactly. So it's sort of, so if something, if you're saying you would go for a dinner with friends and stuff, but like then if you're living in an environment like this, not for like a week but months, basically modeling apartments and just seeing people doing this, and you kind of like, the more you compare yourself to others, the more you think about how much you eat, and then you're measuring yourself every day, or like your agency measuring you all the time, and you're being so preoccupied with all thinking about your weight and the way you look like, that you kind of like, I start disliking the way I look like at that point. And like it's never been really enough for me. Like I always felt quite like, oh, my tights could be like slimmer, that could be different, or like I shouldn't have eaten this because now I feel like I'm bloated, and you always ending up feeling really bad about the way you look like. And it's not, it's not only, I would say it's not only sort of like agencies or the pressure. I think it's like is coming from the industry in general, sort of like the requirements that, starting from the top sort of clients and creative directors, and the desirable look of the model for the shows.
Yes,
and
designers. I mean, designers are deciding that they want,
and
34-inch hips, which is a bit weird.
It is sort of a chain, and then it kind of goes, people like it, and people buy magazines where the girls look like this and this, or boys, and it's sort of, it kind of becoming really desirable for everyone. So, and then you doing this modeling job as well, that sounds really glamorous, because then yes, you ending up on the catwalk like this, but then you also feel really horrible about yourself every single day. And I'm not saying every single model will feel like that, but that was my personal experience of, when I also at the beginning, like I just didn't, it was so normalized in a modeling apartment and among my friends. And then I know now, because I would, after years, speak to some friends about, eating behaviors, and when I've been doing my research, and I spoke to some of friends of mine about it, and it would come up that like so many people felt exactly the way I felt at that time, that and it's kind of shocking that so many people felt the same way, but like no one really spoke about it because it's been so normalized, and everyone thought it's just okay to feel this way because it's modeling and this is what is required from you.
It's also tricky, Lena, if you're a model, like, and you're feeling like overweight, for example, but if you talk to people who aren't in the modeling industry, they're just going to go, no, you're not, you're really skinny, and they don't really get it. So it's like, so you can't really talk to people. It's hard to talk to people who are really empathetic, who aren't in the industry, because it's really hard to understand when someone is clearly slim and they're like, what are you talking about? And like, they don't realize that you have to get certain measurements, or else you're not going to Paris and that'll ruin your career, and all these things going through your head. Pressure.
No, exactly. Sort of like people sometimes, I think in general, people would assume a lot of the time, and I don't even know if, sometimes maybe bookers and the modeling agencies that never really had a like closer, I don't know, relation, or like even didn't really know the history behind sort of like modeling environment and how that actually works. And like it's not like we just magically skinny and we don't really care about it. So some people really have a great metabolism, like genetically they're just super skinny, they could eat anything, but I think is a really small percentage of people working in modeling industry. And like a lot of people actually try to stay in a certain shape for the job because this is our job. So we exercise because some people want to feel good, but some people want to lose weight or like maintain the body shape that they have, or they have to have for the job. So it's not really, it's kind of, people assume that it's just so easy to be that skinny, which is also quite like,
well, the way I see it, I mean, models are like athletes, because your body is your job. Like some of my clients I've worked with long term who do different types of campaigns, like if they're doing like fashion week, then we have to get certain measurements. But if they're doing like a lingerie thing, they don't want to be as skinny as they were in fashion week. Exactly. So it's like we have to change their body, just like you would prepare an athlete for different competitions in different ways. And I think that's actually quite helpful, because when you see yourself as an athlete, you're more likely to actually think about feeding yourself the right amount, and recovery and sleeping and stress and training, not starving yourself, because that's not the way to, it's actually not the best way of losing weight, and it's not the best way of looking good or feeling good.
But this is the thing, like right now we kind of know that, and we have this information available, and we know that starving yourself is not really the answer anymore. And it's like even losing weight within a week or two, like it's just not really sustainable, and that it's not the right thing to do. And you would maybe even sort of, because I think social media empowering you enough right now to kind of say no to these things, like you don't really want to harm your body for a job as well, because at the end of the day it is only a job. Like, but I think at the time when I was 17 years old, and that was my life, and then it's like everything was like when I wasn't small enough for certain jobs, I kind of perceived that in a way that there was something wrong with me, and I was taking everything very personally. So that was really kind of harmful. And again, like I wouldn't really blame anyone for that. Maybe I just wasn't ready to work in an industry like this, or maybe it is a little bit industry in general fault that I wasn't provided with necessary tools, information about all of that. So
do you separate? I was talking to, do you know Rebecca Pearson?
Yes.
I was talking to her about this, and we're talking about, because like you, I mean, if you've been in the industry for more than 6 years, you're kind of a veteran, because most girls don't last that long. So even though you're so young, you're kind of a veteran of the industry. And she was talking about, we were talking about how you have to slightly separate yourself, so your identity is not completely wrapped up in work. And she was saying it's so important to have things outside of work. Like, for example, you just finished your master's degree in psychology. I mean, doing anything like Rebecca does she runs a skincare thing, and does facials. I think doing things outside gives you more perspective, and also allows you to meet people outside of the fashion bubble.
Meeting people from different industries, and even people from my university, and my friends sort of like show me different perspective of, you know, like how going out with your friends and actually, you know, people wouldn't judge you on what you eat, and it's actually
Yes.
completely different. And it's like, if I would be saying that, like, oh, I think like I look really bloated, it's like, why do you even care? That's like, no one
Yeah.
cares how you look, like no one judges your body weight at this point. Like, why are you so
Yeah.
preoccupied with that? This is something that like we used to talk a lot in a modeling apartment. So
I bet. Yeah.
you just kind of like getting used to it. And you know, you're in the way that like you measuring yourself, because this is something, you know, measurements are really important when you're going to see modeling
Yeah.
agencies. But if you're going to start doing it, it really changes your, it changes a lot in the way that you see yourself.
Yeah, no, it's not good at all. I hate being, I mean, occasionally we have to measure when people are trying to get ready for fashion week, but I make sure they don't look, and I make a point of not talking about calories or measurements. I'm like, just, you know, when clients come to us as models and they need to get ready, or an agency gives us a client and tells her to help her to like look after her for like a season, we rarely talk about her body, because that's the whole point. We can worry about that, while you can just have fun and play around in the gym, rather than creating more obsessions.
Yeah.
It's so easy. I see so many trainers who kind of like, they try to help, but they're just creating more problems by constantly talking about food and exercise. And it's like, well, it's like, that's dangerous.
Yeah, but I think it's sort of like, it's just because we been kind of growing up in this environment that, you know, that was so important in the beginning, and sort of being a teenager and just kind of being told about this, you know, measurements all the time and your weight and sort of what you eat. And it's kind of, you just basically, in a time when you're developing really your personality, that is, I feel like this is sort of like something that becomes a part of your personality at this point, when you start really early.
Well, yeah, you're right, because it's in a really impressionable age. That's why I think if you're doing any kind of job working, I mean, I feel very like responsible, because a lot of our clients are kind of teenage girls or girls in their 20s. And I feel we have an ethical responsibility, which is way more important than their results we give them.
Yeah.
You know, and I think modeling agencies and bookers also should maybe remind themselves that they're dealing with real people.
Yeah, I think sort of like, to make really businesses like this better, the industry kind of, you know, safe for people, it would be really good if like modeling agencies and the clients and models, like everyone be a little bit more empathetic, sort of like putting yourself in someone else's shoes.
Yeah.
Because it can be really tough at some point. And also you need to understand that like some people might not be able to read your mind. Like, I'm sure lots of people in the industry didn't really know that I've been struggling when I was younger, but then I also didn't really tell anyone about it. So it's really, really difficult to then, if you're normalizing that and you're ignoring your problems, it's, you know, no way for this of getting out. And then the industry keep going the way.
I still think the responsibility lies on the kind of adults, on the personal trainers, nutritionists, on the bookers, on the agents. I think it's their responsibility, because they know the industry more, to kind of like spot the signs, as opposed to an 18-year-old being completely open and saying, hey, I'm struggling with this, because you're a kid, basically.
Exactly.
And I think the onus should be on them, but the best we can do is, best young models can do, is to kind of empower themselves as much as possible by, you know, I mean, what do you think, what are the best ways of upskilling and giving yourself more knowledge to help navigate through the industry?
So I think a very good thing at the beginning is to find yourself a good agency. So the agency that's going to support you from the beginning, because I know models who been starting working in this industry professionally from the age of 14, and then also they would get a really good support and the guidance from the agencies, and the parents would be involved definitely at that point. And you have the agency that is like pushing you to lose weight or do certain things that you don't want to do, and saying, you know, like asking you to sign a very like contract for many years that there is no really responsibilities of the agency towards you as well.
How do you work out whether an agency is good or not?
I would probably, at this point, if I'm thinking about it, just say speak to models, speak to other models that have been working with these agencies. Speak to models.
So find out who's signed to them, try and find their Instagram, reach out. And ask them.
It's kind of like same as any other industry. Like if you thinking about joining a company, like you would probably right now go to like LinkedIn and like check whether someone was, like working there previously or something. And then like you do reach out to people, you do trying to do your research before you getting into something that, it's really hard
We sign a contract. Yeah.
really hard to imagine for a young person to just like go to random company with completely no knowledge about it whatsoever and starting
Exactly.
work there, right? It's
Yeah.
that's pretty tense. So I think like doing research at the beginning, because bookers, they I don't feel it's like in a culture that like they feel obligated to tell you everything. For them, it's quite like, oh, you should know, which we know we just don't know because
Well, bookers aren't really, there's not really a course to learn how to be a booker. It's a very odd job. We've talked about this in a couple of podcasts. And I talked with a booker recently, actually. It's a very odd job. And there's no real guidelines. You just kind of like do it. And it's like very much about the personality of the person, as opposed to actually, this is how you're supposed to be a booker.
And this is again something about like industry being really unregulated. So we sort of like have to think about all of that. So basically being, I don't know, following all this great Instagram profiles, sort of, I'm not saying only about like models and power, but like there's so many profiles that are supporting models and basically making things transparent and telling you about the industry, pointing out the things, how this very glamorizing industry look like in normal life. So it's really important to reach out to people, because even if I work in London and I work with one agency, I probably would know things about like 5 different agencies. So if someone is starting modeling in London and asking me about like whether you've heard about this agency, and then it's like I might not, but I might know someone who be like, it just modeling community is actually not as big as people.
No, you're right. It's pretty small. When you reach out, people tend to be pretty honest, because it's particularly when it's anonymous, like in a direct message, because there's no ramification. So people are free to kind of say what they really feel about their mother agency.
Exactly. So I feel sort of like it's really, really important to get yourself the agency that's going to support you and, be able to distinguish between what are the red flags when you're starting modeling contract with the agency, and also read the bloody contracts, because this is also something
and maybe get your parents involved, or get other people involved.
Yeah, so this is something that, again, like business, and then that's all kind of, agencies creating the contracts. So of course they taking care of their business, not on you. So you have to make sure that you take care of your business.
Very true. I'm going to give a little shout out at this point to a book called The Model Manifesto, by Leanne Maskell, and she's now working in the legal. She's working in the legal world. She used to be a model, and she's got quite a lot of information about reading contracts and the legality of it, and it's worth reading.
No, we've been recommending the book as well. It's really, really good for anyone who's starting in the modeling industry. So this is the research. So in this book, probably like the research is done. It's just everything is put in a one book, and just even reading that and just having a little bit more idea about what the work actually involves, which I really wish I had when I was younger and when I was starting this.
What's been the hardest thing being a model for you?
A little bit sort of, I think, confidence, fighting with this confidence, because I think I started modeling just because I thought it is very glamorous, and I heard, going to Milan and Paris, and my self-esteem probably at the time wasn't really really great. So I thought, oh, it sounds very, very glamorous.
I think anybody, any 17-year-old, doesn't matter where you're from. So it's the idea of being photographed and being in different cities, that's incredibly alluring.
And I thought like, oh, people really, so this is what everyone want to do, and I'm really gonna build like I'm gonna build up on my self-esteem and confidence and everything, and I thought that's gonna be great like that. But then equally, the opposite thing happens. So if you go into the modeling industry for the reason that you want to improve your self-esteem, that wasn't a really great thing to do, because basically opposite happened. So I wasn't confident about myself because I was comparing myself all the time to other people. My self-esteem wasn't great because I was very self-conscious about eating, and I didn't like the way I look like, I didn't like the way my body looked like, and it's been kind of going the way that I haven't really had much self-acceptance to myself. So like even people giving me compliments, like I just would not believe in what people have been saying. So it was kind of, I think, the self-acceptance and all of that, it was very challenging sort of to.
So what do you recommend now? I mean, you're a psychologist now, so what advice would you give to actually, if someone knows they're not very confident and their self-esteem is a bit low, what advice can you give to help people's self-esteem if they're in the industry?
So I think, but mainly in my case, it was like this, lack of self-esteem and everything, and confidence, and was coming from not knowing much about the industry and taking everything personally. So I didn't really know that the things, even if you have these requirements that, you have to lose weight because this is the requirement for this particular job, like to do the
It's not because you're fat and ugly, it's because that's the way it works. Yeah.
And this is exactly what I was perceiving. So it's kind of like, and I wasn't practicing any like self-acceptance, or sort of like I wasn't really trying to appreciate my body for what it does. It's like I can run and I can walk and I can, it takes me everywhere, and it just
it was being reduced down to a clothes hanger, right?
Yeah. And it's like, but there's so many amazing things, and you're just focusing on this like negative circle, and it's really like negative vicious cycle of this negative thoughts about yourself and stuff. So like just getting out of it step by step, really kind of surrounding yourself with the people that see different values in you rather than just the way you look like. Because being in a like circle of modeling constantly can be really toxic, not because people are wrong or bad, but it's just kind of like really hard to.
Well, you get reduced down to your looks, and that's just one teeny tiny part of who you are, which isn't that important for people outside the industry. It's just not important, but it seems like the only important thing when you're actually modeling. So
so it's kind of looking at it this, being aware of this realistic way of modeling, and it's also remembering that it is only a job, and it's not like your whole life, and it shouldn't be your whole life, because at some point you're going to stop modeling and you're going to start doing something completely different, which might be even better for you, or you might be way happier.
Yeah, we'll talk about the importance of hobbies. I mean, I think it's so important to have other interests, because you don't want to just stop modeling when you're 28, 30 with zero skills and zero passions. It's going to be it'll be a very tough existence.
Yeah. Although I kind of, so this is funny thing, because I also wouldn't really say, even if you're not doing anything, like modeling is sort of like, it's not only, I don't think it's only teaches you how to stand straight and how to walk properly and all these things, like I feel during my modeling experience, just not saying that it's been all bad, because I had a horrible experience in so many ways that are affected rest of my life, and I'm still kind of practicing self-acceptance and like trying to make my confidence better and all these things, but step by step. But I feel like I've learned a lot. Like I've been traveling to different countries. I've learned so much stuff about different cultures, and then communication with people, and then like emotional management when you basically feeling broken down during the job, that is really hard because you're freezing in the middle of nowhere in some desert, or it's just
you're right about the communication. I think the more you kind of go out of one's comfort zone and talk to different types of people, and when you're on a set, a shoot, you've got the makeup people, you've got the photographer, there's usually a little team around, and people from different countries, different ages, different sexes. So if you kind of use it as a way of you can use it as like a self-development tool to actually get on with people and talk to people, and it becomes much more enriching rather than just like, oh, I just have to get nice photos.
Yeah, exactly. Because if you're going to think about it, sort of like not many people starting working professionally at a very young age. And then if you're starting modeling at very young age and you work professionally and you developing all the skills, you become very independent. Like I was going to China for 2 months, not even knowing how to speak English at that time. I was kind of like using Google Translator to communicate with people. So, like all the skills that are like you just basically being thrown into the industry. It's really challenging.
This is how we get worldly, though. To get worldly, we have to put on situations which are scary. We come out the other side, then we look backwards and go, I survived that. Then your confidence goes up a little bit.
So I'm definitely very grateful for modeling for, just many things. But beside that, like, I also wish I had a little bit more support and guidance, like knowing how to do things and how to speak to people and how to fight for my rights and all of that, which I know now, but I had to learn on my, like, basically personal mistakes, because not many people have been talking about that at the time, which I'm really pleased that people do speak about it now.
So if you could go back in time to when you just started, what bits of information do you wish you had?
So I wish I knew the most important things, you mean?
Yeah.
I wish I knew it's only a job, and if I'm not gonna get a particular job, it's not the end of the world. It's not that there is anything wrong with me. It's basically, if I didn't get this job, I'm probably gonna get another job in a week or so. So it's, being like dealing better with rejection, sort of like, it's, not taking it very personally. Those sort of things as well. And I think I would be better with reading contracts and picking agencies that I kind of decided at the time to work with. The agencies that are actually caring and guiding you, like, throughout your career, and support you. So that's pretty much
good advice. Like I said earlier, if you get signed to an agency, or an agency wants to sign you, there's a good chance other agencies want to sign you. So you've got control, you've got the power to, you don't have to say yes straight away.
No, and it's sort of like in lots of, places like London or Milan, like, it's not only one agency that you want to work with you. There are so many agencies. So if you
can shop around.
Exactly. Where before it was kind of like, when I signed my first contract, which was terrible, by the way, it was like awful. But I really wanted to sign it because, like, that was the opportunity that just happened in my life, and I was like, this is great. And I didn't know like that any other modeling agencies exist, so I was like, oh, this one wants me, so I have to sign this contract, which was a mistake.
Well, we live and learn. All right, I've got 2 more questions for you before you pop off. Firstly, that's my alarm telling me that you need to go. What was the most fun job you've ever done as a model?
Most fun job? I think I really, that's difficult. I feel like there were so many, like, different jobs, so it was kind of like,
you've done a lot. You've done a lot of stuff.
It's sort of like different places, and like some of the jobs were really hard, but like one of the fun jobs, it was definitely working with other people. So I had like one catalog when we've been, it wasn't like many outfits, it was like really fun scenario, like you had the different scenes for everything, and we've been just kind of playing in a, it's sort of like we've been changing locations. It was like being in a restaurant, and then we changed the location to another sort of like a cinema scenario and stuff, and it was kind of, we've been just kind of enjoying our time while having some meal and like having a coffee while the pictures were taken. And then after the end of the day, and I was doing it with like 3 of my friends, so we've been
amazing.
kind of at the end of the day, we had a great time. We had a great dinner. Like, we went to sort of like nice places. We had like coffee in the middle of the day, but they were just pictures of you. So I was like, it was actually really fun.
That's when it's like you've got a really cool job. Where you get paid just to hang out and have fun with friends.
And it happens
while looking fabulous.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. My final question is, what's next? I mean, you've just graduated. Congratulations on your master's. You're still modeling. I mean, are you planning on carry on modeling, or do you want to do something with your master's degree now?
So I'm sort of like, I'm definitely going to take some break right now from because I've been studying psychology for 3 years, and then I did my master's for another 1.5 years, really, in mental health, and now I kind of.
What was your thesis in?
So my thesis was about mental and physical pain in depression. So kind of connection between mental and physical pain. So it was a little bit different. I kind of couldn't really choose as in my undergrad. Sorry, that's my dog just looking here. So I wasn't really able to choose at this point. Sorry, I'm actually gonna pop her down because
that's all right.
Sorry for that. So I wasn't really able to choose my topic as I did in my undergrad. also doing research about modeling, which I really, really enjoyed. But right now I want to focus a little bit on Models Empowered and see what people kind of want.
Yeah, I love your podcast, by the way.
Yeah, we kind of had a little break on this as well, but I hope we're going to come back.
Very hard to maintain. I mean, I have 2 podcasts. I take little breaks every so often because you don't want to stress yourself out. That doesn't help anybody.
And like in modeling, there are so many like inspiring people that, you know, like models should listen about, and so many people that, you know, new models could learn from as well. So I think doing this podcast is just really important. So I'm going to be going back to doing this as well at some point. But yeah, having a little break and thinking how, you know, what I kind of want to do. Clinical psychology probably, but now I just need lots of sleep. Mainly. But...
Well, look, thank you so much for your time today. For people listening, if you want to follow Lena and her co-founders, Models Empowered, it's models_empowered on Instagram. I think your podcast is just called Models Empowered too, right? And that's on Spotify.
Keep making it very, very simple.
Yeah, it's a good idea. Spotify and iTunes. So yeah, please do follow. Great advice. And thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the MX Podcast. All feedback, reviews, and social shares are very much appreciated. To find out more about the Methodology X Online Members Club, our award-winning MX Group fitness classes, or to join our global family of MX instructors, please visit danrobertsgroup.com.